Today is, read it that well because the marker's kind of dead. It's called graffiti art. And I'm pretty sure everybody knows graffiti to some extent. And if you don't, I'll show you the most common tool we use today and in the past a little bit. This is a can of paint, spray paint. Usually has a cap and sprays out enamel paint. Pretty much predominantly used. You've probably seen tons of stuff from houses to buildings to anything get blemished with the can of paint. We also have probably the most permanent marker that's used today. It's a pilot marker. Usually they come in black. They're extremely permanent. They mark any surface, windows, anything. They pretty much destroy the surface that it is. And pretty sure you've seen it around. What most people don't really understand about graffiti, that it is a crime, but it's a very, very, very in-depth crime. And it has a really, really long history. So what we're going to talk about today is the history of graffiti. We're also going to talk about how it became substantial, because at first it really wasn't a substantial art form. It was more of a crime, more of a sense of communication. So we're going to cover the history, we're going to cover how it became a substantial art form and crime, and we're going to talk about how it plays a role today. So, according to ThinkQuest, History of Graffiti at thinkquest.org, graffiti has been around for millions of years. It was around during the Romans. It comes from the Greek word graphein, which means to write. Now, it had early forms of calligraphy. Calligraphy is a form of art, but it's a more form of art just of straight writing and cursive and Old English and stuff like that. So pretty much everybody pretty much knows what that is. And it displayed messages, and displayed messages for for crimes, if there were scandals, different things that were going around. And it kind of really wasn't a form of crime. People kind of did it like as if they're posting signs up in a sense, but just with different paintings, brushes, different things. But then it became to where everybody started doing it. And before the fall of Rome, they solidified it as a crime. So after the fall of Rome, it spread through civilizations. Everyone did. I mean, you got civilizations that were even conquered by Europe, such as Indian nations, Chinese nations, that were doing this as a form of graffiti. Now, punishments came for this crime. Punishments were extremely severe. We all know that in the past, medieval times, they had their own ways of doing stuff. So anyone who was writing graffiti at the time, they would have their head cut off. Anyone who was reading graffiti would have their eyes gouged out. That was in medieval times, Chinese culture, and a lot of indigenous cultures, such as like Aztec Indians, Maya Indians, and such. So it pretty much stayed common within communities, but it didn't get really solidified as an art until America was kind of coming into pretty much contact with it, and people wrote stuff. People wrote stuff. They did a bunch of cool stuff like that, but it really wasn't like anything big. It didn't have like a movement behind it, or a sense of art behind it, or even a sense of crime where it became organized. How like you have drug trade, you have extortion, all this different stuff. So those are like forms of crime. This wasn't solidified yet. It became solidified, pretty much around the 19th century. Became a substantial art form according to the book The Art of Getting Over by Stephen Powers. It did not reappear. It did not reappear like in a new form until the 1960s in New York. A guy dubbed himself M2U00165 and started writing it all over the city. Now, he made an alias for himself, a tag. Now, a tag can be displayed in many different forms, but I can give you like a small visual of it. This is how it first started out. Very scrabble with paint, markers and stuff. Everybody pretty much see that? This is pretty much taken from stuff in Philadelphia and New York. And it's just really bland, really all over the place and everything. But it expanded. It expanded with form. And just from that basic thing, M2U00165 was the first one to take it. He was the one that was like, boom, I'm just going to put it out all over the city. And it became really, really big. It became like a really, really big thing for like the youth, inner cities and such. The next step of it, which is pretty much according to an essay that I got, is called The History of Graffiti Part 1, written by a graffiti writer named Deal. It went from the streets and the urban neighborhoods, and it went to the subway transit system. Now, pretty much everybody knows what the subway transit system is. New York, LA has one, Philadelphia, Chicago. But it exploded extremely on the subway system. The first guy to really take it there, he was even actually interviewed by the New York Times. His name was Taki 183, T-A-K-I 183. And this guy exploded with it. From there, it sparked it. It happened around 1971, and from there it took off. It started off real small, like what I showed you, really just kind of, really small form. Then people started to take it somewhere. They started to expand the form of it, like taking letters and putting texture and color and shape to it. And it became something like great, man. It was just boom, exploded everywhere. I could show you a little bit of what it looked like as time started to progress. This is from an artist named Dondi, and this is pretty much the extreme form of like what it got to. They would just do everything. People drew, characters and such, but it was mainly name. You had an alias, and you expanded it through. This would be called a piece. So they pretty much is just, and the piece is pretty much the highest form of the art. The tag is the smallest form. You took a tag and you took your name and you just expanded, because it all started from the tag, a simple signature, a simple scribble, and they expanded to the big letter form, the shape and the color and such. So from that moment on, it was pretty much on the subways. Subways they were getting destroyed constantly. It was in the public eye, it was noticeable, and the public demanded something about it. Because the public, they had to pay to get onto the subway system. So it was like, why am I going to pay my 50 cents, my dollar, my 25 cents, however much it was, to ride dirty subway systems, you know what I'm saying? And they were from inside and out. If it wasn't with the marker, if it wasn't with the can of paint, if it wasn't beautiful, ugly, whatever, it was, and even in the insides of just, where people would wait, it was everywhere. So it was becoming a really big eyesore to people. So the public had to like really make a big thing. The mayor of New York at the time, Mayor Koch, it was around in 1985 when he started to really kind of put this into perspective. And they made a task force for it. And it was the first time the police task force came into consideration about this, and they started dropping down on all these graffiti writers. It lasted on the subways until 1989. They finally came to the conclusion that why are we going to be paying over these cars when we could just totally make a new system of it. They took the last car, the subway cars at the time were made out of like pure steel and metal. So they took them, they recycled all the old cars that had graffiti on them, and they made them into aluminum cars. So therefore it was harder for it to paint, the paint doesn't stick on as well, and they made a really, really good security system. They had dogs, they had cameras, all these different things that came into perspective by 89. 89, graffiti just shifts. It shifts basically, artists don't know where to go, they don't know where to paint. So you're not going to see it on the subways anymore. But from that, it almost took it somewhere that no one would ever think it would go, to where you see it now. If you see it now, it's just like real small and minimal, but the real history behind it is just like going from simple messages like millions of years ago to subways, and now they had to take it to the streets. So in 1990, they pretty much took it to the streets. It was a street movement. All these writers that were doing stuff pretty much on the subways, they took it and they just went all out on it and expanded. It went all the way to major cities, to LA, everywhere you could see that, LA, Philadelphia, inner cities more or less. Now it plays a common role today, big time. It's a really, really extreme art. I know from experience as being a graffiti writer, it is something it changes your life in many different ways. The positives from it, I've heard people say that it's changed their life in a positive way. It gave them good friends, they've got out of drugs, it just kind of gets them more oriented, focused and stuff, but the bad things coming from it, it's a crime, man. I mean, people step down to the lowest demeans. They steal, they fight, people die from this. It's like a gang. People have crews, groups of people they congregate with, and they go all out, and it's a really rival with territory type of thing. So it plays a really, really big factor to it. But the good side about it, it's a really, really great art. It's expanded great. Like, I'll show you some photos of what it could look like today in a sense, the more expanded form of it. This is a little bit of what it kind of is forming into, really, really big, intricate designs and colors and stuff. There is the still basic form of it, but it's expanded really good, so it has its ups and downs. But, I mean, I hope from this, you pretty much got a little bit of the gist of the history of it, kind of where it got kind of sustained and like solidified, and kind of what it is today and what it's kind of playing as a role in our society. So, thanks.